For many people, the most exciting category of electric vehicle these days is the affordable category, the vehicles we're seeing release and compete for the cheapest option available. However, the luxury EV market is growing in big ways. This is where Tesla began, but we're now seeing many great competitors to the Model S in particular. Today, I'm reviewing one of the best EVs in this category, the Mercedes EQS. It packs a lot in one package and comes at a premium because of it, but there's a lot to love. I'm going to break down the good and the bad in this vehicle, so let's get into it, and a special thanks to ShockFlow for sponsoring this video. The Mercedes EQS is one of Mercedes' first all-electric vehicles. As it comes in the US, it offers up to a 350-mile range on a 108.4 kilowatt-hour battery, 0 to 60 in as little as 3.4 seconds in the performance model, and starts at about $105,000. That means that price-wise, this is competing with the Model S Plaid, Lucid Air, and some of BMW's new electric options. Today, we're reviewing the EQS 580 4MATIC trim, and it packs a lot of great features. Big thanks to Mercedes-Benz of Temecula for letting us check out this vehicle. Worth noting they had no say in what I talk about in this video. They were just kind enough to loan us this car. From the outside, the EQS is clearly designed for efficiency and aerodynamics. I personally think it looks great and has similarities to Tesla's designs, but some tend not to like this design because of everything being rounded out. From the front, this is clearly a Mercedes with a false grille keeping their design cues intact. One interesting thing about the front of the car right off the bat is that you can't actually open the hood. Mercedes went with no front trunk on this car, since the interior has an impressive HEPA filtration system. That system is located there, and Mercedes says this is why there is no front trunk. I'd argue that they could engineer it better, since the Model S has both a HEPA system and a sizable front trunk, but either way, since it's all electric, the only thing you'd need to get to in the hood here would be the wiper fluid. For this reason, Mercedes put a windshield wiper fluid door on the left side of the car. You press it to open and can fill from there. To me, it just kind of adds an extra door, but it's a funny quirk of this car. The only ones that can actually open the hood are Mercedes service centers. From the side is where you clearly see the rounded look of the EQS. It has the normal doors you'd expect on a sedan, with handles that pop out when needed and disappear when not. One of my favorite details about this car as well is that when looking at the wheels, the rear wheels actually steer as well. This enables a tighter turning radius on this large sedan and is super easy in practice. You don't even really know it's there, but it's just happening and making your turns that much tighter as needed. Around back is the trunk, and up top you can see the glass roof. This glass roof is different than we're seeing in other EVs for a couple of reasons. Inside it's not panoramic, and it hardly has any tint because you can open or close the roof shade electronically. So instead of a panoramic glass roof with tint, you have a two-part glass roof with a shade. To finish the exterior, the charge port door is located on the back left of the EQS and features J1772 and CCS. This is standard on all US non-Teslas today, but soon may be changing. Inside is where you can really feel the luxury of this car. This is absolutely a Mercedes in every way. The materials, build quality, comfort, and even tech are incredible. There are 5 seats, and the front seats include a number of great features. There are standard adjustments, the most aggressive lumbar support options I've ever felt, and massage functions. My only complaint here is the way that you adjust the seats. There's a touch control on the door shaped like a seat, but it doesn't have any feedback, so it can be a tad confusing with adjustments. As far as comfort though, these may be the best seats I've ever seen in an EV. The rear seats are fairly standard with middle folding down as an armrest, and it has a pen holder and cup holder that come out as well. As for storage space, the EQS is pretty good, but due to the lack of front trunk, it does miss in some areas. It's a hatchback though, so that immediately makes it very versatile. Up front under the main screen is the center console. The cover slides up and reveals a wireless phone charger, 2 USB-C ports, cup holders that can collapse or spin right into place, and some additional storage. My biggest complaint here is that while the wireless charger works, the phone location is pretty far back and not that accessible when you go to grab it. You kind of have to squeeze your hand in there. Underneath that is the lower open area for additional cargo, and you'll find 2 more USB-C ports there. Then behind that is the armrest, which opens with a button and reveals more storage. Inside there, you also have 2 USB-C ports, so you have a total of 6 of these up front, which might actually be the first time I'm potentially seeing too many ports in a car. I don't imagine the need for 6 of these, especially since there are 2 more in the back, but it could be all related to the location of the USB-C ports that you particularly want to use. The glove box opens with a normal button and is as expected, but also includes a spot for a special fragrance bottle. This is a very luxury Mercedes feature that this car has. So the air inside can have great HEPA filtration, the screens will tell you what the air quality is inside and outside, and you can choose settings for your in-car fragrance. There's additional storage in the door pockets, and the cheapest part of this car that I could find is actually on the back of the front seats. Those pockets for rear passengers very weirdly do not match the materials of the rest of this car. It just feels very flimsy and cheap. But then your main storage is of course the trunk. To open the trunk, you can use the key fob, you can release it on screen, or you open it by pressing right in on the Mercedes logo. This logo actually acts as a latch for the trunk and opens up when you activate the car's rear camera. Here it is popping out when we shift into reverse. It's a pretty decent trunk space with the seats up and includes a cargo cover. Underneath the trunk is also a decent understorage compartment, which is better than I see in a lot of non-Tesla EVs today. Then as needed, you can remove the cargo cover and fold down the rear seats. This opens up great storage that only a hatchback can offer, and it shows the versatility you can get in this car when needed. For headroom, the glass roof doesn't fully contribute to adding there because of the cover. It's in two parts and opens with a swipe on the header. It's really great to have and effective, but I really felt the heat this roof has when the sun is out. I personally think I prefer to have a tinted roof that I can keep open and rejects heat as opposed to this setup. It got very warm and made it so I definitely needed the shade closed, but I can see where people would prefer this option. The EQS has a very nice sound system, and even if it makes no difference in quality, the metal grates for the speakers make it feel great. There are many ways to charge the Mercedes EQS, but one of them brings us to today's sponsor, ShockFlow. The ShockFlow G1 portable EV charger is a 2-in-1 portable mobile charger that helps you charge while on a trip or while mounted at home. It's 10 times faster than a standard 110-volt charger and will add up to 29 miles per hour of range. For reliability, it's IP67 waterproof, dustproof, run-over-proof, lightning-proof, and operates in temperatures ranging all the way from -22 to 122 degrees Fahrenheit. It supports both level 1 and level 2 charging, and comes with J1772, making it easily compatible with most EVs today. It also allows you to customize your charge time, customize the current, and operate when electricity cost is the lowest, all using the charger screen itself. Here we are charging the Mercedes EQS with it and seeing impressive speeds of up to 40 amps via NEMA 1450. It's great to see all of those charging stats on the charger's screen itself without needing to get back into the car to verify that it's charging. To check out the ShockFlow G1 for yourself, click the link in the description below. If you do so, charging at home will be your best bet. It's incredibly easy, you plug in when you get home, and the car is good to go the next day. Then on a road trip, you'll be subject to third-party charging networks like Electrify America and EVgo. The EQS supports up to 350 kilowatt charging, so it can charge up pretty quickly at those networks when in ideal circumstances. But as I always mention, those networks can be unreliable. Additionally, in the real world, tests have shown this car maxing at 200 kilowatts. That's still really great, but not quite the promised 350 kilowatts. Tesla's supercharger network has a huge leg up on third-party networks, and it's a big reason we're seeing more automakers adopting Tesla's connector for future EVs. I expect Mercedes will do the same in the near future. For now though, road trips may be stressful, but day-to-day driving and charging at home will be incredibly easy. You can also bring a mobile connector with you, like the ShockFlow G1 as I mentioned. Up front, the EQS blends a lot of physical controls with a lot of screens. As a driver, you have buttons on the center console that relate to the screen, along with a fingerprint sensor that relates to driver profiles. Then you have lock and unlock buttons on the door, seat adjustments, light adjustments, a parking brake, 2 stalks, a number of controls on the steering wheel, and then buttons near the rear view mirror. On top of this, in trims that include this screen, you really can see 4 screens when driving if a passenger is present. There's the gauge cluster display, main center screen, passenger screen, and a heads-up display. Let's check out the screens in detail and see how the software stacks up. When there is this much screen in a car, it's really important. So the EQS is definitely a combination of old school and new school. It has tons of screens, this whole 56 inches across of screen up here that is actually split into 3 very clear parts, but then there's tons of buttons as well. So for some people that's great, for others they might feel that there's too many buttons or too many screens in this car. Overall, it's been actually pretty easy to figure out, but there are different menus for different things. That does take a little getting used to, but the interface itself is very good. It's very responsive. The only thing I've noticed that is slower than I wish it was is the navigation. When your car is actually moving, the little animation of a car going into the next step, it's super choppy. It feels like this is a super old interface, but then you use the screen and realize it's super responsive. So I'd love to see that improved in future versions of this, but let's check it out. So this is the main center screen, and this is going to be your view most of the time. This is for maps. So there are buttons down here at the base of the center console, and this is the kind of dual interface thing that it lets you do. So I can click here, the driver button, and that brings up these drive settings and drive functions, and then you can click all settings right here, get to a lot more settings, stuff for driving, all the vehicle stuff and driving and comfort. Dynamic select is what lets you change drive modes. We've been in sport for a lot of this, which has been pretty fun. You can change suspension between comfort and sport, steering similar, and there's various light settings, system settings, and info right here. So there's this EQ menu right here, and if I want to get to it, I can click here at the base of the center console for the button, or of course, I can just tap into it right here. And it's interesting because when you click it here, it brings you right to range, but when you click it there, it brings you to route. So it's a little different. Actually, sorry, it's the charging screen it brings you to. So it's telling me 90%, 303-mile range is my estimate at 90%. And an interesting thing right here is it says DC maximum 44 kilowatts, and we were a little confused by that at first, but I think it's saying at this state of charge, that's going to be your maximum DC fast charge, which does make sense for a 90% charge. So there's all sorts of other stuff and other info in here, including range. I can also activate these gestures, which is done, I think, with the fingerprint sensor right here that'll link your driver profile. And that's how it knows which driver is in the car. You get in, you put your fingerprint right there, and then everything will adjust, which is pretty cool. Also, as you notice, right here at the base of this screen at all times is climate controls, and this is all screen. So I can adjust all this stuff, but it is all definitely a screen, so there's no physical controls when it comes to your climate. So there's a lot to this screen. You can click home right here and you have all of this stuff. Mercedes EQ, apps, settings, comfort, phone. Comfort is very fun because these seats are fully massaging. Definitely something that you like in a luxury car at this price point, and they're really impressive. I've experienced this in the Lucid Air, but it's just a little more premium and a little nicer feeling in this car, and these seats are super comfortable. Definitely total Mercedes right here. In apps is where the dash cam is, and this is actually a feature that Tesla touts and other companies are starting to add, like Rivian, but most companies don't have something like this, so it's exciting to see this from Mercedes, a legacy automaker. And of course, there's multiple ways to get to all the menus, so I could click home and I could go to media that way, or I can just click right here into my media, and Bluetooth, Sirius XM are the main things you're going to be using. The other interesting thing is that this is totally a touchscreen, of course, but you can totally control it right here with this button. So there's a button on the right side that has a home, it has all of your swiping abilities, and there's an identical one on the left side of the steering wheel that controls the gauge cluster display. So let's check it out. I click home right here, and I can click through all of this stuff just by swiping. Some people will like that you have both options there. I do imagine that from a UI perspective, though, that does create certain limitations because they have to make it so that it's able to be controlled here versus it having to only be controlled by touch. But let's check out the gauge cluster display now. So the gauge cluster display is of course just there. It's not a touchscreen in any way, which wouldn't make any sense, but it has all of your relevant driving info, but you can do a lot of things here. So you have display options. I'm going to click home and I can switch between understated, sport, classic, navigation, assistance, and then service. And each one has a very distinct feel and characteristic to it. The sport one is pretty cool right here, but let's check out classic, pretty much your classic Mercedes look. Navigation is going to be prioritizing your navigation. It really puts your full map right there. So there are tons of ways to see your navigation because not only am I going to have navigation over on the center screen and here, but I'm also going to have it on the heads-up display. So right now I'll take a route and let's see what it looks like. So it takes a little bit of getting used to like where all these controls are because sometimes they're not the most intuitive in my opinion, but right here is how I'd cancel a route, and I'm going to guess that I tapped this to mute. Yep, there we go. But as you can see there, the navigation was a little choppy. So this moving around just isn't as good as we're seeing in other cars like Teslas and Rivians. But overall, the interface is pretty good and pretty easy to get used to. I also kind of like the curved display. Now that we're going into reverse, we can see the camera system. It has a great overhead view. I think it does have a little bit of that legacy feel, and I wish it could be bigger because there's so much more screen real estate this could take up if they wanted it to. But this animation is really good and really responsive. As I'm turning the wheel, it's actively showing me exactly what my path is going to be. Alternatively, I can press this button right here, even prior to going into reverse or anything, and I can get my 360 view. And this is going to be basically the same menu as what we were looking at, but you can totally pan around the car. You can click into specific views if you want to really make sure you're not curb rashing, and it's really useful. The one thing I will say is this car is red that we're in right now, and this animation is a totally silver car. I can imagine that being just like a little bit of an annoyance. So here we can see there's a front camera that it's adapting to, and you can actually have a very similar view to like when you're backing up. And the lines are showing me exactly where I'm going forward. And this could be very useful because on a lot of cars, when you're backing into a space, you have a great visualization that can help you do so, but then you're kind of on your own going forward. But this can really help you out to show you exactly how much you're turning, and the turning radius in this car is really great because of four-wheel steering. Just like everything's so good on this UI, but look at how choppy this is. But then you get this, which is really cool. It's kind of like a AR thing, where it's showing you on the display what your next turn is, and it's even labeling it in the image itself. And then once I take this turn, you can check that out. This kind of stuff is pretty great, and it really helps you out. But not only that, but it's showing me this turn on my heads-up display. If I want, I can switch this over to navigation. I can have my navigation here, and I can have it here. My only complaint there would be that the graphics are quite different. It kind of seems like they're different systems. Also on the gauge cluster, you have your options for the heads-up display. So I swipe up, I can do standard, sport, minimal, which is really just one number over there. Or I can have an eco display showing me all of my relevant range info. I can adjust settings like brightness by going left or right. Or I can adjust its positioning by going up and down, which is pretty cool. Or I can just turn it off if I don't want it. One interesting thing about this car is that the trunk will open from the key fob, or it will open in the back by pressing on the Mercedes logo. But it's all open fully or close fully. If you want to open it a smaller amount, you can do it from here, but it's a little bit of an odd control. I think they did this because you have a trunk open button inside the door over here, like a physical button. But you can press this, and then as long as you hold it, it will open, and then as soon as you let go, it stops. So right now it's open all the way. If I want to close it partially, I can press and hold and then just let go. It's a little bit of a touchy control. I think I would personally just opt to use this one in the door. One other cool feature of this car is the HEPA filtration, and they really make this a point in the car because it takes up the full hood. You can't even get into the hood. And so they have this whole air quality screen right here where you can see the exterior air quality and the interior air quality. Overall, you're definitely committing to a lot of buttons with the steering wheel, the paddle shifters. You have two stalks, you have all of these controls, your mirror adjustments are right here. You also have headlight controls, you have a physical control to move the steering wheel, you have a parking brake right here that's physical, and then you have all of these buttons. So there's definitely a lot in this car, but the one control I would complain about is the seat adjustments. They're right here, and they don't actually move at all, and they don't have any sort of haptic feedback or anything. So if I want to push my seat back, I just press on here, and I'm moving back, but there's no real indication that I'm kind of landing it until my seat is actually moving. I will say that the window controls do feel pretty nice. For the front passenger, there's a lot that can be done on that screen, and it really gives them an opportunity to be the ideal co-pilot. There's navigation, phone, radio, media, and more all available to that passenger. Another feature worth mentioning before we drive this car is Guard 360, which is a security feature. Only a few EV brands have this, so it's great to see here. It will use the cameras around the car and monitor it and record when you're away. Now let's take this car for a drive. Right off the bat, I notice that this is a heavy car. In some ways that's really good, in other ways it's not the best, but I really like it. It feels heavy, but it also has really smooth ride quality. Going around some parking lots right now that have quite a bit of dips and stuff. It's just handling it so well. You obviously feel that the dip exists, but it's very much absorbed. And that's something that is pretty much mandatory when you're getting a car this expensive. One thing I will say is we've been at higher states of charge. So I'm right about, I think like 89%, 90% right now. And you can definitely feel the regen being reduced. Now that's normal on electric cars when you get to higher states of charge, but this one especially, even with strong recuperation on, which you can adjust with these paddle shifters, I still have to use the brake a lot. So I'd love to see a little bit stronger one pedal driving there, even when you're at 90%. But you can change that on the fly with the paddle shifters. So I click plus right here, normal recuperation, and then no recuperation. And so now it's driving like entirely like a gas vehicle, no regen braking, nothing. This is the 580 trim, which is more expensive. It gets slightly less range than the 450 Plus, but it has more acceleration. And it's great. It's really good acceleration. It's not Plaid level acceleration, but it's definitely very fast and feels very fun to drive. It's also so smooth. And there's two different driving sounds you can turn on if you want. There's one that sounds more like a gas vehicle. I don't really personally desire that. And then there's one that just adds some kind of space sounds that's kind of fun. Or you can just have no sound whatsoever. For me, I like the no sound whatsoever. It feels fun to be accelerating silently, but they have those options. I will say that steering isn't quite as tight in this car as I would like. I have quite a bit of leeway before the car is actually steering. And even when you go into sports steering, it doesn't really change that. Now let's round this corner and then let's give it some power. So this has the fun sounds on it. Really great acceleration. Woo! Yeah, it's not quite Plaid level. My stomach didn't drop, but I'm definitely like, wow, this thing is really kicking. It does handle super well though. And one thing I like especially about this car, that four-wheel steering enables a great turning radius. So I'm gonna take a U-turn here and you can see how tight that is. So check out this U-turn. Really good, especially for a car that is as big and heavy as this is. As far as the way this thing drives and accelerates though, it's doing a really great job, and ride quality in particular is noticeable. This actually might be one of the smoothest electric cars I've ever driven, and it's just a really great setup. Total Mercedes luxury. Also, when you're inside this car, sometimes I prefer different UI, and there's stuff I would change about this myself if I was getting my perfect idealized car, but it just feels nice in here. This feels much nicer than a similarly priced Tesla Model S Plaid. Okay, so this happens every once in a while. I didn't say Mercedes like the hey Mercedes thing, and every once in a while it's just listening and then it says something. I'm sure you can turn that off or optimize that, get it used to your voice, or make sure that you're subscribed to the service. But that has happened every once in a while. I'm just in the middle of saying something and then all of a sudden it's talking back to me. In any case, I was talking about the Plaid versus this. This interior is just night and day nicer than what Tesla ships in the Plaid. I really love the simplistic interior of the Plaid. I loved having that car, but you can't deny the materials and the build quality of this Mercedes EQS. It's just above and beyond. And I think any Tesla owner would agree with that, but then say there's things that they like about their car that this doesn't quite have. This definitely has more of a traditional luxury feel. Give it some power. Woo! Oh, yeah, that's great. One thing I will note that I just noticed is the speedometer is pretty delayed. That is a really weird thing, in my opinion. Let me see if I can demo that real quick. I'm just gonna accelerate. Yeah, 22, 29, 37, 43. Like, I don't really like that. I like seeing all the numbers on the way up. That's just an interesting UI thing. And I've seen that a couple times. It's kind of like how choppy the maps are when it's driving and has the little car animation. One little detail about this car, it has your traditional blind spot indicators on each side. And I've seen like an alert pop up when I've had the blind spot, but there's no blind spot cameras that pop up on turn signal. And I would love to see that in this car. The Lucid has it up on the gauge cluster. I think Hyundai, Kia, and Genesis put it on the gauge cluster. Tesla does it on the main center screen. Rivian doesn't do it yet, but I imagine they might in a future software update. That feels like with all of the features this has, the 360 camera that I can bring up, the least you could do is bring up a blind spot camera that comes up on turn signal. But let's try out driver assist. So right here I have an on button and then reset. It looks like I have steering. Yep. If I try to steer out, it's not working for me. And I can click up here. I think it's a swipe. Yep, swipe gesture to go up. And it is fully steering and driving for me right now. Blind spot indicator telling me there's a car to my left. It's telling me to keep my hands on the wheel, so it's definitely similar to Tesla in that way. That's how it's mostly monitoring, even though I think there is a camera that can see me. Felt like it was getting a little right there. The one thing I would like in this system is some visualizations here. So I could probably pull up these cameras and kind of see what's going on. No, I actually can't. I can't see those cameras. Interesting. Camera image off when speed is too high. Okay, so yeah, I have no camera options or no visualization of my car. If I go to maps, I can see that, but just those autopilot visualizations that a lot of cars have with their driver assist just gives you more confidence that the car really knows what's going on. Versus here, I basically just have the car steering for me and accelerating, and it's reliably slowing down, and it's not doing it suddenly. It's doing a really great job. But I basically just have blind spot indicators to tell me that the car knows there's someone in my blind spot. And if someone's cutting into my lane, I don't have that visualization showing me, okay, the car sees that car and is about to slow down. Even though it's probably going to do a great job in that situation, and this system is known to be very good, those visualizations just give you a little more confidence. I'd love to see that. But yeah, this is doing a great job. It's really smooth. I actually kind of didn't even really realize we slowed down to like 65. Overall, I'd say the driver assist system works really great. It was doing a really great job. It actually was smoother at braking and accelerating than Tesla's system, but it had some limitations and drawbacks and stuff where it wasn't really notifying me when I needed to turn off, or it wasn't really clear if it was on or off. And then the visualizations, I'd love to see those. So this is a specific car. The EQS is a pricey luxury sedan, but for those in the market, it packs a punch. It doesn't quite get the range of a Tesla Model S, but the interior in some respects is incomparable. It drives great, is incredibly smooth on the road, and is definitely worth checking out. Mercedes has a number of EVs out and on the way, and this gets me very excited for their electric future and the entire industries as well. This isn't just a Mercedes that happens to be electric. It's a fantastic electric vehicle. In the meantime, if you want to compare this to the Lucid Air, you can check out my full review of that car linked up here or in the description below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.